Welcome, crew, to What Are Your Three, a Channel 3 podcast where we take a member of the Channel 3 community, discuss 3 games of their choosing, go through some honorable mentions and some other odds and ends, have a nice little video game discussion. I'm Dan Tucker, and with me as always is Ray.
What's going on, everybody? Today's guest is a Channel 3 member we've had this a couple times now. We've had the Gargadas both on. We have had two Willis brothers, though I believe there's another one hiding out there somewhere as well. So we get now the other half of evolvixon, but don't worry, he is his own person. I wanted to make that very clear. It is Zerojin who is coming with us tonight. How are you doing, sir?
Good. How you guys doing?
We are good. We're excited to have you here. We're excited to talk about these games. I feel like we're going to get some similar and some different, but I'm excited to kind of have the other half's perspectives on these games.
Yeah, we're going to talk very specifically about the other half's perspective on one of these games. I'm very curious.
I tried not to pick too many of the same, but she has good taste.
That's fair. Well, the first one's not going to be an overlap. The first game we're going to talk about is Chrono Trigger, a game that is probably on the Mount Rushmore for, if we were to take the Mount Rushmore of Channel 3, what are your 3 games? Actually, we have a list for that, Ray. I've probably got to look at that sometime and see exactly how many times this one's come up, because
I was going to say the same thing. I feel like this is a favorite of podcast guests.
Rightly so.
We've chatted about Chrono Trigger a few times now, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Which also reminded me that I have to go put in my quest on my favorite cartridge that I have the Japanese cartridge of that game sitting up on my shelf that I never completed that quest. But that's not here. That's neither here nor there. Zero. So you started this off. We said pick 3 games. We didn't give you any kind of preface and say pick your 3 greatest of all time. We didn't say pick 3 you're playing right now. We're going to talk a little about some you're doing now, some you've done before. But this was the first one that hit the list. Tell me why.
Well, first off, I knew that this would be a popular one because, it is Chrono Trigger after all. But it is definitely my favorite game. I played a lot of Squaresoft RPGs back in the day, and I even played others. Illusion of Gaia is a really good one. Zelda's kind of in the same vein, but Chrono Trigger hit at the end, towards the end of the Super Nintendo life cycle, and it just kind of culminated everything from a lot of the other Squaresoft games that were out there. And I don't know. It's one of those magic games.
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out, what is it that makes this one magical? Is it the story? Is it the gameplay? I've talked on here too, because you mentioned the end of the cycle, right? This was 95, I think, or at least I got it in 90. I think 95 is when I got it. And I talked about the PlayStation 3 and 4 both really having their best games probably coming at the end of the cycle. And I don't know, is that the same thing here? Because there wasn't a huge graphical upgrade or anything like that, but it certainly was one of the most stories of any game in the.
Oh yeah, well the time traveling aspect was really awesome, and especially with once you found out how many endings there were in the game. I don't know of any other Super Nintendo game that had that many actually detailed endings to achieve just in one game. But honestly, weirdly enough, one of the first things that made me interested in it was I actually saw it at Target back in the day when there was the big Target kiosk there, and you'd walk up and I remember it was all red and they'd have pictures of all the different new games that were coming out, and you'd hit the button and then it would play the commercial on the screen there. And anime back then was actually, I don't even know of anyone that called it anime. It was known as Japanimation to most people.
It was nerd garbage is what it was.
It was naughty adult nerd garbage is what it was. Everyone's like, oh, you watch Japanimation? Your mom lets you watch that? And it's like, dude, it's not what you're thinking it is.
Wait, no, hang on, because it is if you watch the Street Fighter anime from then. It's exactly that.
Oh, yeah. And I'm pretty sure Fatal Fury, and I think the Tekken one, and Ninja Scroll. So, yeah, there's a lot of the moments there.
Yeah, but side warning, just a little PSA for everybody. I went to watch the Street Fighter anime because of another podcast. Don't watch it with the kids. Don't watch it with the family.
No,
that one goes hard and fast real quick. Sorry,
it's not a family one.
Go on.
I have a great story about the Ninja Scroll anime and how I had a double VCR player, but it was in my parents' room, so my friend let me borrow the tape, and I was copying it to a blank tape, and then I came in later, and my mom and dad were sitting in the room watching it, and I just slowly backed out of the room And then later the next day, they gave me the tape, and my mom goes, "Your dad watched that entire cartoon. It was terrible." And my dad was like, "That was cool."
That conversation could have been a lot worse when you walk downstairs and there's a videotape just on the dining room table and your parents staring you down. So
Right.
that could have been
So
a lot
tell
worse.
me about these ninjas.
So anyway, I apologize
But-
for derailing that, but go on. You were talking about the height of the nerdiest portions of anime, and
Yeah, anime was kind of a rare thing. Like, you're watching Japanese bootlegs that someone subtitled and shipped from Japan, and you're raiding comic book stores for anime sections and stuff. And the first thing that hooked me was the cover and the awesome animation. I had no idea who Akira Toriyama was. I didn't know anything about Dragon Ball, but that was the first thing that got me. And I remember I couldn't find it anywhere, and I ended up renting it from Warehouse. And I didn't even know that they had video games, but I was hooked ever since.
see, that was what I was wondering, because it was a game that was hard to find for me, at least. So when you said you went to Target and they had it on the kiosk, I was like, wait, was this game actually available somewhere without having to
that was the great part. It was on the kiosk, but it was on the kiosk, but they didn't sell it. It was just there to tease you, like most things were back in the day.
Listen, we're lucky that we even got a localization for this game anyway. How many games did we not? I mean, you look at how many, 3 Final Fantasies we didn't even get. Live Alive is one that's the most recent example of like, okay, finally 20 years later, we'll give it to you.
I remember Soul Blazer. I never had even heard about that game until I was on so many games I would have loved as an adult. But I found out later, having grown up, a lot of people were ordering these out of catalogs and stuff. And that wasn't even, I had no clue.
Yeah, that was not a part of the culture I was in tune with. So you mentioned, so you weren't even able to find it. You went to rent it from a place that you mentioned that I don't even know what it is, but a place that apparently rented video games, surprisingly, much like when people find out like some libraries have a video game rental section.
Yeah, it was actually Warehouse. I think they were mostly a music store, but in my quest to find this game, I ended up finding out that they rented games there, and it was excessively expensive, but
it was expensive. It was more expensive to buy because games, much like they were now, were like $50 to $60, and I remember this was one.
They could range. They could range all the way up to $70-$80.
Yeah, this was an $80 special right here, and there was nothing you could do about it because it was it was whatever EB or whatever predecessor of GameStop it was. Like, we got it, but it's $80. I'm like, what? And it was $80 everywhere. Okay, fine.
That's the one place that had it, and they knew it.
So you mentioned kind of the Dragon Ball tie-ins, the anime tie-ins. There's also some tie-ins. I know Final Fantasy VI. We'll touch on that one a little bit later. But you've mentioned one of your favorite Final Fantasy game, or your favorite Final Fantasy game on Channel 3. You've mentioned some intertwined development here. Are you familiar with any of that? And do you see any tie-ins between this and 6?
Between Chrono Trigger and 6?
Yeah. There was some. They were kind of simultaneously developing, and then kind of took the time travel elements and branched it off.
Right. The gameplay and combat and stuff, I mean, they do have a pretty similar flow. And Chrono Trigger, I mean, from a graphical standpoint, I guess 6 looks a lot more like 2, but Chrono Trigger had that extra art styling from Akira Toriyama and all that. They're both great games. I remember that the big thing that caught me on Chrono Trigger that they didn't have in 6 was the double and triple text. And I mean, still even to this day, I haven't played another game that has done the text in quite a way like that.
No, not with all the different combinations that were available too. That was the thing with that. Like, wonder what this batch of characters are going to.
And yeah, that was one of my favorite things to do, is just roll around with different character combinations and get them all leveled up and unlock all the abilities, and then try to figure out techs. And then you figure it out later that there's stones you can equip that unlock special techs, and excessive amount of replayability in that game.
So I have to ask, this is something it's come up with Final Fantasy VII a lot with Aerith and her situation and her, as we've discussed, it's not even a spoiler, her death in the course of that game. And I blame this game for putting me in the conspiracy theory corner of there's got to be some way to revive Aerith. So in this one, right, and we'll just say spoiler alert, if anybody's like trying to find this game, now. Like it's still saved on my PS3 and I think maybe even my Wii. I've got it somewhere else. I've got it a few places, but find it if you can. But skip this if you want. Anyway, so Chrono dies in the course of this game. However, if you have played a carnival game basically from the beginning up until his death, you can win a stuffed Chrono. I don't know.
Like a Poyozo doll or whatever I think they call it. I can't remember exactly.
Is it a meat puppet? That's the thing. That's the first question I have.
It's like a little stuffed animal.
Yeah. It's a stuffed Chrono, but you can revive Chrono and bring him back for the rest of the game at that point. And did this end up breaking you when Final Fantasy VII happened? That like, well, I was able to bring Chrono back. Why can't I bring Aerith back? What's that about?
Oh yeah, I tried everything, and it was fun because back then the internet was. I mean, there was all number of random things that you could. I saw hacks online to where, because the brief moment where you get to have Sephiroth in your party. Of course, there's 15 different ways to recruit him permanently or things like that. And it's fun thinking about that, like in Final Fantasy VII with Aerith, and trying to figure out all the ways to unlock, a way to revive her or get the holy materia. I remember that was one of them. You had to beat all of the weapons, and the Golden Saucer town in the desert. There was something to do there. You'd have to find an item from a special enemy, and it went on and on and on. And of course, none of it was real.
Ah, the pain, the horror. But hey, you can actually bring Chrono back. Yeah, that going. So when you played this the first time, were you able to revive him?
So I rented it and then I had to return it, and I think it was like a $15 rental at the time. So my parents were like, "Nah, dude, it was pricey." So I ended up having to wait like 5 months or something for my birthday to get it, and then by that point I had picked up a strategy guide. So I used that, of course, because I was trying to finish the ending. By the time I had originally beaten it, I didn't even know you could bring him back. I hadn't figured out all that stuff and gotten it. So I was hunting down endings, and then I found out you can bring him back. And one of my favorite parts is when you do bring him back, he's no longer locked into your party anymore. He just becomes a normal party member, and you can swap him in and out as you see fit, even though, you got to roll with Chrono.
Yeah, you have to, because he's the most beefed up, because you spent half the game with him just being in your party anyway.
Oh, yeah. And then he crits every time when you get the Rainbow Sword. And I think he was my first to do 9999. And, there's no reason not to have him. But there are some cool combinations without him, though.
Any other parting thoughts on Chrono Trigger?
I would say that I want them to remake it or make a sequel to it, a la, what Chrono Cross got, which I've never finished Chrono Cross.
I couldn't get into it.
I don't think it's a bad game, but I couldn't get into it. Exactly. It's not what I was expecting, and my expectations will not let me get over it.
You and I are not alone. There was somewhere recently I saw someone say that there's a lot of people who just could not get. There's apparently some point where, like, if you keep pushing through it, it clicks. But yeah, you're not alone. It's okay.
It's Chrono Trigger for other people, and I think it's cool that it exists for that. But I would like to see a new Chrono Trigger, even a remake. But I gotta say, I'm scared.
Give that 2DX or whatever they're calling 3DX, whatever that enhanced format is.
Oh, the 2D 3D thing. Yeah, I've heard rumors of that, and I mean, that could be cool. But we'll see. Maybe.
All right. Well, let's jump into your second game here, and this is the aforementioned return back towards where Evil's cast went. Let's talk about EverQuest and its multi-decade run. Where did this one start for you?
So the first time I ever experienced EverQuest was freshman year math, and my math teacher was crazy into EverQuest, and that was end of 99, so it had just came out, and he had a computer in his class, and if you'd finish your math work early enough, he let you mess around on it. And I found EverQuest, and he actually let me log in on his account, and I spent the entire class period stuck in a river trying to figure out how to get out of it until I drowned and had to go to my next period. And that was my introduction to EverQuest.
How many points were you docked in the class for murking his character in the river?
He actually let me make a new one because there was no way in hell he would let me touch one of his characters, because there was corpse runs. When you die, your loot stays on you. And he was like, dude, if you touch my character, you will fail immediately. So make your own.
Excuse me, what happened to his grade here? Nothing. Just leave it where it is.
You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
So this is going back 24 years now because I'm doing math. Thank you, math teachers out there. I could do that off the top of my head still. So the better part of a quarter century later, is this game still kicking for you at this point?
Yeah, I haven't been on it solid ever since. After that, I ended up trying to get it, but subscription games were unheard of. And, I didn't have a bank account at the time. So trying to convince my parents that they needed to pay at the time $10 a month for me to play a video game, it might as well have told them I was picking up a crack habit. But they probably would have reacted less like, what? You're going to subscribe to a video game on the computer? No way. So I ended up, getting my first subscription and stuff through gift cards and things like that until I finally showed to them that, like, look, it's a real video game company and they're not trying to like steal everything out of your bank. And it's funny how things are nowadays. Everyone subscribes to everything, but that was the first subscription game I had ever heard of in my life.
It was setting the trend.
Yeah, the downfall.
So I'm going to ask. So you, I need to hear your side of the evil story here. How did you drag her into this game?
So when I played Everquest back in the day, I mean, I had a Hewlett-Packard Pavilion with a 400 megahertz. No, my
maybe
first
the crack
one was
habit
a Pac
was cheaper.
Bell.
It might have. Tell your parents it might have been cheaper to have the crack habit.
I know exactly.
Don't do drugs, kids. I'm sorry, Ray. I'm sorry. I gotta.
Or Everquest. Wow.
Don't do drugs or Everquest.
Don't do crack or don't do Everquest.
They do call it Evercrack for a reason. But my computer was ancient back then. I was on a 56K modem, and zoning between zones took 5 minutes. Like, you literally go make food and stuff before you'd zone in. And, as a result, a lot of the game was it's a hard game too. Like, it's not like WoW where if you go you're running from Ironforge to Stormwind on a low level character and you're running by skulls and you can still get past them and stuff. Everquest is different. Like, you will die and you'll even be in a low level zone and some super high level thing will just come by and wreck you. So getting around in that game in and of itself was a very scary kind of deal. And there's no maps. It was just you and your tiny little 640 by 480 window, and that was pretty much it. So I didn't experience a lot of the game. So later on, they started releasing TLPs in modern times now, and I was checking those out. And Evil played a lot of WoW with me, and she over time she was like, this game looks ancient, and I got really into it again because the TLPs were cool. Live is too much for me. Live is good for people that have played the entire time, but it is overwhelming how much stuff is in live now. I mean, an MMO going over 2 decades, expansions every year. It's just too much, but the TLP was nostalgic.
I just want to put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that for your future game. But go on. Sorry.
Sure. But, it was cool now to try to go back and do things that I couldn't figure out when I was a teenager or just couldn't do in general. And she started playing with me and she got hooked on the housing on live. That's the downfall of the TLPs is they don't have housing back then. And EverQuest still to this day has one of the best housing systems I've seen in any MMO.
What makes that the best one?
Literally any item in the game. Generally, like 99% of what I found is completely placeable in the house. You can rotate it, scale it, mount it anywhere, any item that you can find or anything else. And I haven't seen that in other ways. Usually it's microtransaction shop stuff like buy your sofa for $4.99. But I don't know, it was cool, and it was strange to see it in such an old game when WoW was out and things like that. And it's like, wow, this ancient game added housing.
So you ready to take a crack at this game again, or you think you're going to leave it on the shelf for a little bit?
We did start playing it again recently. They have a new TLP out right now called Oakwind, and I thought we were done, but we actually just resubbed like a month or 2 ago.
I'm Commander Nikki, and this is your favorite podcast on gaming. At least, I hope so. Hello and welcome to the trailer of Nikki's Gaming Universe, the show where I, Nikki, will talk about all things gaming. Things such as different genres, soundtracks, music, art. Are video games art? Yes, they are. That's not up for debate. I will talk about my favorite games, gaming moments, gaming movies and shows, also different kinds of gaming media in general. From action-adventure games to zen-like casual games. Just everything I want to talk about when it comes to gaming. So get your controllers and keyboards or whatever you want to use to play ready and enjoy the show.
Game number 3, Diablo 4. So I'll start with this. What's been kind of your take on the preseason / season 1 of Diablo 4?
I thought preseason was great, and honestly, I have not touched it since the season dropped. I made a wizard, so the season notes were really disappointing, and I don't know. Diablo 4, I think they did a good job. The world, the atmosphere, the story, I think it was all better than 3. But I gotta say, it's very dry when it comes to just the loot. I mean, I leveled the entire time as a firewall sorcerer. Firewall, man. Firewall. Like, what kind of fun is that? And it was just because it worked really well, and it was super easy, and it was fast. And I don't know, I just thought that was fun. Like, I tried to use Hydra. It just didn't work out. So I think they can get there. I think if they can get loot on track and then maybe next season or something get the balance of nerfs and stuff under control, it could be a lot better, and I'll come back again.
So there's definitely, I've read a bunch of people who were not happy. They say it seemed like almost the game got harder when they changed it, and the loot seemed almost like impossible to get to, or kind of like just not worth the grind to get to it. Is that kind of the issue with it?
Yeah, I think I counted it up while we were leveling to 50. I think I got 20 or 30 legendary rings, and just rings, and so, most of them were like the same ring. They all had the same ability on it, and I just put them in the stash just as a joke to see like how many rings can I collect on one friggin' character. And it just got to the point of that, like every time I'd hear the ding, I'd look over at Evil and be like, guess what it is? And I hadn't even looked yet. She's like, is it a ring? And it's like, I don't know. Oh, I got 2 rings this time. Nice.
So outside of all that, before when we were playing a preseason, I felt like I had a positive opening, like you said. Are you a fan or user of the hardcore mode?
I played hardcore back in the day. I have not done hardcore on Diablo 4 yet. Evil she's very apprehensive to try something like that, just because she would be very upset if she lost a character. But I mean, I come from Diablo 1 and 2, so you would literally reroll a character because you misclicked one skill point and you're like level 70. So I mean, I've done that a dozen times. But yeah, we haven't tried hardcore in Diablo 4, but hardcore I've noticed it's even in WoW now. Like, it's becoming quite the hot thing right now.
I would say that whole concept terrifies me. I don't know if I talked on an earlier podcast. I had trouble hitting prestige in Modern Warfare. I needed to unlock weapons all over again. I don't know if I could mentally handle losing a character and just it being gone forever.
I know. It's too much.
I was wondering, any kind of heartbreaking stories from back in the day where like you didn't expect to lose the character and something went wrong and is kind of downhill.
When I was playing Diablo 2, man, I was on dial-up still, so I died to the lag monster many times. I died to thing I didn't even see. The game never loaded them before. I just zoned into a room and it's like, you're dead. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll catch up with you guys later. Anyone want to take me through some bloody runs? I'm rolling another one.
So they are, the new season's supposed to come out. Season of Blood. That's the name they've given season 2. Here it's supposed to have new end game bosses. Hopefully, they're saying they're going to fix the rewards. Maybe you won't get as many rings. They said they're not going to take up space. So do you think you'll give it another shot when season 2 comes out? Are you going to end up watching other people first?
You know, the great thing about Diablo, and Blizzard tried to take it away with battle passes, I feel, but so far they seem pretty much frivolous, and that's fine. But there's no sub, so if they drop a patch that seems interesting, or balance out characters and make it fun, I'll definitely come back and grind through another season or two. when Diablo 3 came out, me and Evil, we played it pretty solid for a while. I made a lot of money off the Real Money Auction House, so I was actually kind of disappointed when they closed it because I never bought anything from it. But I remember I sold a perfect rolled offhand for my wizard, and then about 1 or 2 weeks later, they nerfed it into the ground, and the guys, whoever, I sold it for the maximum amount that they would allow you to sell in the Real Money. I got, I think, $200 or $300 from it, and once the initial hubbub of 3 died off, we quit for a while, and then they kind of cleaned up stuff, got rid of the Real Money Auction House, and I'm expecting they're going to do the same thing with Diablo 4. They'll eventually get the loot pinata figured out and get things interesting, and yeah, we'll definitely come back.
All right, well, we've spent enough time away from the RPGs. Let's get back into it, shall we? Let's move into your honorable mentions. The first one, you did a little bit of a skipping stone here. You want to talk about Final Fantasy, and we touched a little bit on 6 and 7 here, but you also mentioned 16 and Tactics. But I want to start with 16. So a recent game you've been playing here. Did you finish it, first of all? And just kind of want to get your take on 16 so far.
I haven't finished it yet. I would have if not for the fact that I found out that I definitely cannot play it in front of my son. And
nope, it's a hard M on this one.
Yeah, hard M for sure. In fact, not to spoil it for anybody, I mean, it happens in the demo, it happens in the first opening cinematic of the game, but there's a period in which there's a child and there's an adult and there's a bad guy, and then a head gets removed and then blood sprays everywhere. And my son literally walked into the room at that exact moment. And he's like, oh my God. And I was just like, I looked at him, I was like, this is the new Final Fantasy game. And he goes, this is Final Fantasy. And after that, I couldn't really play it when he's around. But I think I've put around probably 10 hours into it now. And I like it. I played a lot of Devil May Cry back in the day. I play a lot of Souls games, Elden Ring and stuff like that. So I really like the fighting system they put in. I feel that has a really good flow to it. And it still feels very Final Fantasy. I mean, you can feel the Game of Thrones a lot, but they lean into the Final Fantasy tropes pretty well without making it, I don't know, Final Fantasy started getting that too anime cheesy sometimes. 13 is kind of my best example of that.
15 had plenty of examples of that too.
Yeah, definitely. I called 13 cutscenes and corridors. That's pretty much the entire game. As you run down a hallway to a cutscene, the combat system was great, but it's cutscene, hallway, cutscene, and just, I don't know. They lean too much into the aesthetics there, but I think 16's got a good balance. It's not really a true RPG, but it's got enough, I think.
Yeah, so I want to ask about that. So what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously they've changed over time. The combat systems have always changed, right? But they've always generally been turn-based. And between the 7 remake and 16, I think they're kind of done with it in the Square House, I would say.
I feel they're having a really hard time modernizing turn-based combat. I mean, if you've ever played Octopath, I think that was cool, but it's still very, very old school to a lot of people. In the combat and stuff like that, and I know 7, the remake, they had a turn-based mode that I thought I would use more, being a big fan of the original 7 and all the classic ones, but I used it for like 5 minutes and was like, nah, and went back to the action mode. And I don't know, I think turn-based is great in what it is, and I don't really know how you can evolve too much further on it. It's either you like the old school or you don't, I guess.
So I want to jump a little bit. So you talked about a couple things here. Now, the thing I want to segue to based off of that comment is you mentioned Final Fantasy Tactics, a game.
Oh, I'm dying for new Tactics, man.
Yes, that's what I want to talk about. Like I don't know how big of a group of us there are. I don't know if it's like there are dozens of us situation, but it's like a vocal minority, if nothing else, of people who strongly support Final Fantasy Tactics, which takes the RPG turn-based elements and adds like another step back, another step in there or of something that Fire Emblems really continue to carry the torch with, where you're moving around the battlefield at the same time, you're assembling characters, there's permadeath. I mean, I feel like it was their direct shot at Fire Emblem in particular, and some of the other RPGs at the time. But what's given Tactics the staying power is the fact that we haven't haven't continued to get a like 17 versions of it or sequels. I mean, I know there's like the War of the Lions and some things there, but I feel like Tactics is still just kind of hanging in there.
There's something about the original Tactics that it to me it was kind of like Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones in a way. Like you said, permadeath for characters, even like major storyline characters, not all of them, but they can die and they will just be gone out of the rest of the game. And it was kind of different when that came out. And they've made sequels, like they had the Game Boy Advanced one, A2 or something. I can't remember the name. It had the judges that it was, I don't know. It was good. I beat it. I remember back in the day, but it was a little more colorful, a little less serious. I hated the judging mechanic though. That was the worst. Nothing like having like an all magic team and it's like no one can use magic this fight because I said so. And then that's it. There's no reason why. But I know there was a recent strategy game that came out, like a strategy RPG game, Triangle Strategy, which I actually haven't tried yet. And I've heard that is about as close to a modern Tactics as you can get. So I do want to check that one out. But there was just something about the story was such a big driving factor in the game. And there's a lot of depth to the combat and the character classes. There had never been a game with a class-based system like that I had ever played by the PS1 era, that there was just that many jobs that were that different from one another. A lot of replayability in that game.
Yeah, I mean, so many varieties with how you're planning your battlefield and adjusting characters, and like you said,
and then finding out clouds in it. Yeah, that was crazy.
Little do we know we'd have 20 more years of Cloud popping up in everything.
Yeah, now there's memes about Cloud. Every game he appears, Sephiroth is chasing him down because he can't even get into Smash on his own no more. But yeah, it's funny to see. I remember it was like, oh wow, Cloud's in Tactics, and then Kingdom Hearts. It was like, wow, Cloud's in Kingdom Hearts, and now it's like, oh, it's a Pepsi commercial. Cloud's in it. That's cool.
Which one was Boreanaz and which one was Lance Bass? One of them was Cloud, one was Sephiroth.
David Boreanaz was Squall. I think he was Squall, and Lance Bass was Sephiroth.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it was. It was so weird.
I remember when I found that out, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. But then I played the game and I was like, oh, he did a fantastic. And Mandy Moore was Aerith, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, she was one of them. Yeah, quite a weird cast. That I hated Kingdom Hearts when I first heard about it. When I found out Disney and Square.
Just keep going, Zero. Keep going. Just keep going.
I feel personally attacked right now.
I was so upset about it, and I considered Square was dead because they were transitioning from SquareSoft to Square Enix, and I was like, we're done. Final Fantasy is kid stuff now, and whatever. It's time to move on. I'm into Counter-Strike 1.6 and other things, so I'll just forget about it. And then one of my good friends, he ended up, his little brother got it, and he was playing it over Christmas break. And I remember I was visiting family on the other side of the country. We were talking on AIM. If anyone we mentioned that earlier, AOL Instant Messenger, and he said he was playing it, and he said it was a fantastic game. And I was like, no way, dude, you're crazy. And then I went over to his house when I got back, and I watched him do the Sephiroth fight. He was at the end of the game. I don't really care. I'm not a spoiler guy. I don't really care that much. Seeing it and experiencing it yourself is kind of where the real magic is. But yeah, I watched him do the Sephiroth fight, and I was like, I'm done. I'm going to EB, and I'm buying it right now. And I did. And I'm a huge Kingdom Hearts fan. I think they're good games.
See, Ray, it's okay. Relax. It's okay. Hey,
back in the day, to find that out, like your beloved RPG series that is cool and gritty and full of these badass characters is teaming up with Mickey Mouse, it was hard.
That's a culture shock right there.
That was a shock, but they did a great job. That was one of the first real good action RPG games I remember playing back in the day, because they had ones, but they were all very stiff and just not that great. And Kingdom Hearts really kind of opened up the action RPG genre a lot.
Oh, I will say playing them, because I'm playing them back now. And I played Birth by Sleep, and then my son was interested, so I turned on the first one. The difference in gameplay, man, that first one does not feel smooth anymore.
Oh, it's hard. I tried to replay with my son, it is clunky, and the camera and targeting and everything is rough. And it's like, I don't remember having this much trouble back in the day.
I know everyone. We always talk about like the N64 and the cameras in those games, and like to me, like that's just part of the game now. I have to fight the camera. Man, the Kingdom Hearts camera is tough. It never aims where you want it to, and you appreciate how much quality of life they added to even just to Kingdom Hearts 2. Like 5 years later, it's like, oh, there now the game knows what I'm trying to look at.
Yeah, we got 1.5 and 2.5 like HD remix, Sprite Zero, blah blah blah, whatever they have on there. And we ended up playing that after 3 because my son, I actually realize now I've never played the end of 3. He's always beaten it because he likes that particular part of that. I actually should play through it myself. Yeah, after that he wanted more Kingdom Hearts, so it's like, yeah, they released the HD remixes for the old ones, and we fired it up, and he's like, I don't know about this, because it's very, very different.
Oh yeah.
But it makes me laugh now thinking about stuff like the Sephiroth fight, because yeah, a lot of the time you couldn't even see where he was or what he was doing. You had to listen to the things he was saying in order to know what to when to dodge or where to dodge and things like that, because the camera was just a nightmare.
All right, one last Final Fantasy thought or query before I kick it back to Ray. So they did a release, what they call it, the Pixel Remaster or something like that, for the first 6 Final Fantasies this year. And I mean, this may just me going off, or my question for you is this. I feel like it kind of just whiffed. I feel like it was just in the wind and nobody paid attention to it. Is it that the turn-based stuff is just being left in the past, or is it just that there are too many games this year? And knowing that like 6 is one of your favorites and 6 is right there, I just want to get your thoughts on that.
The Pixel remasters, I haven't bought them. I watched some streamers play them because I was thinking, I was on the fence about getting them. I own a lot of the original ones, so it's like you gotta really just having, I have it on Steam. It's got to be a little bit more than that for me to warrant purchasing it. But I gotta say, it's not that I don't think the Pixel remaster graphics are good, because they're pretty. It does definitely look prettier than the original games, but they made all the characters look more soft and kind of chibi-ish and stuff like that. And I don't know, when you're dealing with some of the undertones of some of those games, when, like we said, people are dying, in some games the world gets literally destroyed, it just hits differently when they're so bright and pastel and cute looking in the Pixel remasters. I think it's cool that you can get them all in one pack and they're available on so many platforms. So if you're somebody that's really into trying the old RPGs and you don't want to spend the astronomical amount of money for cartridges for the original systems, because that stuff's just gone through the roof now, and you're not an emulator type of person or anything like that, it's a great way to play them and experience it. But honestly, I would probably try to play the originals first before going for the new ones, but it might be too old for a lot of people nowadays, I think.
All right, so we move on to The Witcher 3, which is 2015 Game of the Year. And, being Game of the Year, we release it multiple times. And it's on all the next-gen consoles at this point here. There's DLCs. So let's start with, where and when did you play Witcher 3?
Oh, God. So The Witcher 3 is a funny game for me because I have been playing it since it came out. And I think I have like 600 hours on my save. And I just actually beat the storyline of the game like last year. It's I've never been into Skyrim's cool. I play Skyrim differently than most people. Mine is how much can I turn this game into not Skyrim anymore with mods until I crash it, and then I have fun troubleshooting it until I get bored, and then I quit playing Skyrim, and that's how I play Skyrim. The last boss is when you can't even tell it's Skyrim anymore, and then I get the game to run for like 45 minutes without crashing, and then I've beaten Skyrim now. So The Witcher 3 kind of fulfills that open world fantasy type of game for me. And I actually started with The Witcher on the Witcher original Witcher 1, which I would like to say it's a good game, but it can be a good game at points. The combat is basically Diablo without the loot pinatas, which is a little difficult without that, the dopamine rush every once in a while. You're just clicking rhythmically on enemies. But the storyline and everything is great, much like 1 and 2 and into 3. I want to replay 3 actually and have Evil watch it so she can actually see the storyline. Because if you've been watching the show, if you like the show, then the game will be phenomenal to somebody that liked the TV show, the Netflix show.
Do you like the TV show?
I have some huge issues with it, namely Kaer Morhen and the entirety of all of that, and that kind of really, that was the first part that kind of killed a lot. I was actually angry after that entire part happened in season 2, and I ended up having to tell Evil why they were wrong and how they ruined so many really awesome characters. And that was the kind of the part where I did realize, like, okay, this show is dying, because what they did with the other Witchers in season 2, they can never do what they do in the later parts. And I don't know, it kind of killed it for me. But I do like the show. It is cool. It's great Henry Cavill did a really good job as Geralt, I think. And it is fun to watch, but if you like the show, even just watching a Let's Play of The Witcher 3, like, you'll be hooked. It's so much better.
So you mentioned you just finished kind of the storyline, but while I was reading it, because it's not one that I've played, there's multiple endings, right? So there's some like pretty serious choices you can make to have that decide how your game ends. Do you ever look into the different endings?
So I didn't know that the game had multiple endings until like the final third of the game. I kind of had started to get the feeling that I'm nearing the end, and I like to look up that, like, the faded hour guides, basically, as I call them, from Chrono Trigger, where you're right before the final part of the game, but you have everything else. So now you go explore and you find like the best things for this and that and whatnot, and then you go lock yourself into like the final arc of the game. So at that point, I figured out that there were multiple endings, and I had been playing it so long since then on the same save, I honestly couldn't remember all of the specific decisions that I had made. So it was going to be kind of a mystery for me at the time. I did remember vaguely of certain parts, but it's like, which thing did I say at that exact moment? I couldn't remember. But I was happy with the ending that I got. I felt like I did a good job.
Right, that's actually where I am with Hogwarts Legacy right now. Like I can go and finish the game, but every time I decide, I was like, but what if I just go here instead? Like let's. I just want to stay in this world a little bit longer. So I'm right there with you on that.
Yeah, Hogwarts Legacy is one of those that I'm not at the end yet, but I'm getting towards the later half of the game, and I realize now I need to. There's too many games have been coming out recently that I can't finish anything lately. It's too much good stuff.
I think 2023 is going to go down like 2007 or 2004 or like 2001, depending kind of where you grew up. Those there's just like you just remember this huge group of games all decided to drop at the same time. This year feels like it. I mean, big games.
The culmination of all of the work that everybody had started during COVID and stuff like that, and things kind of all got bottlenecked for a while. And now we're just kind of seeing, like, it feels like every other week, some huge game that everyone's been waiting for, some group somewhere has been waiting for with bated breath, is suddenly coming out. Like just recently, Pikmin 4. Okay, I had no clue. My son's a huge Pikmin fan, and we usually play through them together, but that's another one of those games where it's like, what? That came out a week ago? What? I thought we were still waiting for it.
I'll say now you're talking Dan's language right here.
All I'm going to say is this: like, Pikmin 4 is the exact problem you're talking about, because I rushed through. I could have spent weeks and weeks and weeks more on Tears of the Kingdom, but I rushed through finishing that game just so I could. I'm trying to keep myself to one game at a time on the PlayStation, or like one game per system. And I wanted to play Pikmin 4, so I had to get done Tears of the Kingdom because there's just too many games. That's all.
Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom 2. My God. Yeah, this is reminding me more and more. My backlog is very full. We
don't
got
talk about that
distracted in
here.
Tears of the Kingdom just building stuff, and then I
Yeah.
forgot that there was a rest of the game to play.
I mean, that's another one. I have all the shrines in Breath of the Wild, and in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm definitely gonna do it in Tears of the Kingdom. Once I hit that story, I was like, well, okay, I've got a lot of games to go to here. I think it's gonna make a big difference for Game of the Year. I don't know what direction Game of the Year goes because one game is just kind of falling on top of another, and I don't know which one to finish.
And I got Spider-Man 2 that I'm like, I don't know how I'm coming out of this year without Spider-Man 2 being my game of the year. I don't know how it's going to
Dan's
happen.
got Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
I'm waiting on
The Spider-Man 2 is going to be cool.
I'm waiting on Hades 2, and I mean, listen, Mario Wonder, like that. That's what I want to play. I want to sit there and run sideways and jump on platforms and turn into the giant Mario elephant.
Have you heard I read a thing a little while back about the playtesters on Mario Wonder. The game is like so hard.
Yeah.
And it's like discouraging them and making them like question their resolve as playtesters and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay.
This
will be interesting.
I was saying that feels like classic Mario.
Injected into my veins. I want suffering.
Right? Like you go back now and like I can play original Mario and get through the 8 worlds in like, a few hours if I sit and do it. But when you were a kid playing those games are hard and unforgiving. Making jumps.
Me and my son, we've played a lot of, me and my daughter too, we played a lot of new Super Mario Brothers. The one that originally came out for the Wii, and then that's the one I play with my daughter, and we beat that a bit. And then they re-released it for the Wii U, and then that's the one I play with my son a lot. And we try to go back and play Super Mario World for SNES, and he's like, nah, I can't. It's too much. And it's like, I don't get it, man. New Super Mario Brothers U, I feel is just as hard as the Super Mario World game, but he disagrees. He thinks the old ones are still tougher.
I had the exact same thing happen. My son randomly said, hey, I'm going to play Super Mario 2. And I was like, I didn't even know you knew where that was. He turns on the online Switch, and 5 minutes in, he's like, this is like ridiculous. I can't get through this first level. And he's playing Mario 3D World by himself and gets through the levels. And I'm like, I feel like I could fall off this a lot more, but he's the old ones are not clicking with the kids.
He likes the 16-bit graphics to a degree and stuff like that. They gotta have kind of the Mario charm, otherwise it's like, this game's old. But yeah, I think the big thing with him is they do co-op games a lot more often now than they and Super Mario World does have co-op, but you're actually taking turns. Of co-op, and that is so different to the modern kids versus like the new Super Mario World, where you're actually on screen at the same time playing together. And he considers that when we're doing Super Mario World, that we're playing a single player game. And it's like, we're playing together still. And he's like, no, we're not, because we're taking turns. It's interesting, the mentality nowadays.
I've completely derailed us here, but I'm gonna get us back to this list. Terraria. That's our last game on our extras here. And so I have to ask. I asked Evil basically the same question. What kind of gamer are you when you're playing this game? Are you trying to fight? You're trying to build? You're trying to explore? What's your version of Terraria?
I am the dude that is hunting to combine random stuff together to make things stronger, and then giving gear to everybody that I make as I go spelunking. I'll build. I'm kind of like a survivalist in a way. Like I'll build like a haunted house, and it'll make it out of spooky wood, but then it's just full of boxes and a bed to hold my crap from the dungeons. And then Evil's up there. She'll make a cooler house, and we'll do towers sometimes, and we'll I do IT work, so my brain's very compartmentalized. So I'll make wings of houses based off of themes of rooms and stuff. I'm not very creative, but I'm definitely more of the crafter / fighter kind of guy.
So you start a brand new world. What is step one? You start the game, and the first thing you need to do is what?
Elevator right away, which is basically digging a hole near your spawn point, which is the center of the map, and you just dig straight down into the ground. And in Minecraft, you reach, I believe it's bedrock or whatever, you reach that bottom layer where you can't break through anymore. And in Terraria, once you reach the bottom level, you're actually in hell, and it opens up into its own zone. And then you unlock the next difficulty of the game as you beat bosses and stuff like that. New things spawn in the game, and new items appear in chests and different things like that. So yeah, it's usually build a hut and then build a elevator, as they call it.
So is this one that you like? Does it lend itself to kind of replaying it, or is it one that you will stay on your world for a long time? What's kind of like the life cycle of a world here?
Usually when you first start, you start on small worlds. And then if you're by yourself, a small world will occupy you for a very long time as you're just figuring out what the game is about and where things are and killing bosses and stuff. But it really depends on if you're playing with other people, because a small world becomes very small once you got 3-4 people with you. There are strategies that some people frown upon, in which you basically save scum and you just generate worlds to find items in there, and then you dump them and bring them back to your main world and stuff like that. But generally we have, whenever a new patch comes out or we're going to play with like a new group of people, we'll always start a fresh world, but we usually do large worlds just so that you don't run out of place to explore. But I mean, Terraria is the greatest value in video games, I swear. The guide never stops updating it. We bought it for, I think it was $15, and this guy, I can't remember the creator's name, but every single patch he releases, he says it's the final patch. It's like friggin' Attack on Titan, if you guys watch the final season, part 2, point 5, the true end. And it's like every single time he's like, all right, this is the last patch. And he releases an amazing amount of stuff that I would easily pay $10, $15 more if he sold it. But he really, free every time free. And it's just the game that keeps on giving.
All right, back to the MMORPG world, and I mentioned this. I teased a little bit earlier. We're going to come back around and bring some of that EverQuest conversation back up here. We're going to talk about Pantheon: Rise of the Fallen, a game that started as a Kickstarter back in 2014. Unfortunately, lost basically it was Chief Creative Officer and Brad McQuaid, one of the folks involved with EverQuest, but passed away in 2019, but the game is officially in a pre-alpha state as of April 2023. But I just bring this up because I mentioned we talk about this, and you talk about EverQuest's ever accumulating information. But Brad McQuaid, in an interview when he was starting this off for Kickstarter, mentioned that modern MMORPGs are being crushed under the weight of their own massiveness. So I just kind of kick it over to you now and just say, hey, what are you looking forward to here? Or what are you hearing? What are your thoughts? I've been kind of curious looking at this one.
So I don't know if a lot of people honestly know about Pantheon even being a thing. McQuaid was one of the founders of EverQuest. He was, I don't know if he was like the one guy per se, but he was a very influential. His character is named Eridune, and they named I think it was their 20th anniversary TLP server after him. Very influential. And so when he left, it was probably when Variant went to Sony, or maybe even before that. He went over and eventually started working on Pantheon, and I'm really excited about Pantheon because the number one thing that turns most people off to EverQuest is the graphics. And I get it. I very much get it. When you look at it, you're like, oh my God, this is like Reboot the fantasy game. If you ever watched Reboot, it's very old. It's very 90s. And if you don't get that nostalgic connection to it, then it's just, it's just an old game. But EverQuest, I've played almost all main MMOs that have come out. Even back in the day, I played Asheron's Call. Most people never even heard about that. All the way through, I played WoW at launch, Final Fantasy 11, Final Fantasy 14, WildStar, Star Wars Galaxies, on and on and on and on. And all of them are heavily influenced by WoW and what WoW set back when it came out. EverQuest is like the one game that plays and feels completely differently than all of those MMOs. And that's one of the reasons I'm still playing it now, in light of, WoW having TLP servers, which actually the time lock progression server, the person that ran those at EverQuest actually left Daybreak Games and now works at Blizzard doing their time lock progression servers. And EverQuest, a lot of people complain nowadays that MMOs are very impersonal. They're very drop in, drop out. You'll join a group, no one will say anything to each other. Everyone runs through, kill the monsters, fight the boss, click your loot pinata chest at the end, see if you got anything good, and then rinse and repeat. And I feel that too in WoW. Me and Evil were raid tanking heals and stuff. And back in the day, I did raiding in Classic WoW a little bit and things like that. And the way Classic WoW feels to players now, and I think why it's so big with Blizzard, is it is still in that old vein of EverQuest, where socializing and grouping with people and actually not being forever on the run. Actually, like in EverQuest, it's a camp-based game. There's quests in the game, but they're not like a yellow exclamation mark over everyone in the town and you got to grind all these things out. You do quests for specific reasons. I do this quest line because it gives me gear or something like that, or it's part of a long quest line to get an epic item for my character or something like that. You don't just do it just because there's quests to do and that's what you do. You primarily pick a camp either in the open world or in a dungeon or something like that, and you grind out. So while you're sitting there in your camp, people socialize a lot. Like you talk to each other and stuff, and they still to this day on the TLPs do that. And a lot of MMOs now are missing that. Like you don't know, like one of my favorite things of old MMOs is you could get a reputation on your server. People would know you. They'd see you out in the world and be like, oh, there's that guy. I saw him in PvP, or, I joined a raid and he was tanking or something. That guy's cool. And you can get a reputation, and that doesn't happen anymore, especially in WoW with everything being cross server, cross realm and stuff. You'll jump in and out of groups with literally hundreds of people an hour and you won't say anything to any of them. And I'm excited for Pantheon because it's more of that old EverQuest feel and style of social grouping. Dungeons are slower, more methodical. You're not trying to figure out how to glitch through a wall and skip 15 monsters in a Mythic Plus or something like that. You're actually there to experience the dungeon and see what you can find and actually get to know the people in your group. And I'm really excited for if Pantheon can do that again in this modern area and kind of give it that modern interface and modern graphics. I think it could do really well.
Well, let's move on to a question from the Channel 3 history books, and we picked one for you to discuss here with us tonight. And the question for you, do you have a favorite piece of gaming equipment?
Oh man, my favorite piece of gaming equipment. It would probably be, because I am a bit of a collector. I started collecting, I thought I was super unique. And when, everyone was sitting at home during COVID, I was like, man, I'm going to display my retro games and like make a cabinet and I'm going to start collecting it. And everybody else had that really unique idea too. But I would have to say my favorite piece of gaming equipment is probably my original Game Gear in the travel case with the magnifying screen attachment and the AC wall adapter. And I think I only have like 4 games for it, but I had the screen light, the magnifying glass, which is super hilarious. I had all the fixins with it. And I would think out of all of my gaming stuff, that's probably the thing I think is the most unique and cool.
I'm trying to find a place to get my screen fixed.
I've seen videos online and it's not terrible to do, but even as an electronics guy, I don't mind, like if it was a Switch, whatever, I'll give me your Switch, let's watch a YouTube video, I'll tear it open for you right now, we'll get your screen fixed. But it's a Game Gear, man, and it's an original one. And if I screw up, it's not, finding parts online is fine. I bet you can get a reproduction case, you could get reproduction buttons, but then I'll always know that A button's a reproduction button because I screwed it up.
What was your game?
They're not that terrible. My favorite is I got Sonic 2 and Shinobi, and I played both of those a lot. I also had a baseball game that, I think it came with it.
Is it the Majors? That's the best one.
Yeah. MLB Majors or whatever. It's actually pretty solid as far as video game baseball games go, but I spent a lot of time on Sonic 2 and Shinobi.
And the final question we ask everyone, what's been your favorite feature on Channel 3 so far?
I actually, I'm a terrible social media person. I don't really do social media, but Channel 3 is a wonderful game, just as Evil has said. I get on there and I like to do the trivia. The different quests are really cool. And the Guess the Game from the blurred image, I do not understand how some people can be like, There's 3 colors here.
You-
I know exactly what game this is, and they get it on the first try. That's pretty sharp.
One has publicly admitted his secret, which is to sit there for a half an hour and try and figure out what game it is. He's not taking.
Way too
Hey,
much
that's
research.
Most
fine.
people,
I
it's a
can't do it.
popular toilet game when they get up in the morning. Nope, not for some of those people. They're taking a half hour and just staring that thing down. That is
I'm
red
still
322. I'm gonna figure this out.
I'm chasing
I got
the I'm
Metacritic
feeling
up.
lucky. I'm still chasing the I'm feeling lucky tagline.
I
every day.
pretty much, unless I feel like, okay, I feel like I know these colors. The first 2 are always I'm feeling lucky.
Yep,
I
first-
will admit
first 2
though,
always.
if Evil does it before me and I have a clue of what it is off of what she said, then I'll skip that day because I don't feel like it's fun to chase my own score. So if I get spoilers, then it's no good.
All right, and with that, we've made it to the end of another What Are Your 3 podcast. Thank you, Zerojin, for being with us today. You can find the podcast at c3.gg/podcast, dropping every Wednesday morning at 3:33 a.m. Eastern on all the major platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. I am Ray. Dan puts this all together, and for our executive producer, Joel Willis, have a good day, everybody.